Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth, the study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake lie imagination. And the distinction is made in the first syllables, MYTH. In Sanskrit, it is ma. Your Sanskrit is a phonetic language. So your sounds you can actually write in Devanagari. You can write even every single dog's bark, you can capture it distinctly on paper using Sanskrit. That's how accurate Sanskrit is. Because no dog or every dog has a special bark. And you can type it down on a paper. If I had to write, I can write it in Sanskrit Devanagari. So maybe it's an experiment. I have tried many times. I write English and instead of Roman letters, I use Devanagari and I write it on my paper. And I can never mispronounce anybody's name. Like there's a friend of mine, I won't take his name right now, but just the Sanskrit, the Mexican word is that Ibarra. You can write Ibarra. The way he said it, you can write it the way it is. You don't have to make a change and something like nobody can mispronounce it. Anyway, I have very, very special guest. He runs Pittsburgh Yoga Factory, and it's in other cities also now, in Florida, and also he's inspiring people in other countries where people are following a very dedicated, real yogi kind of environment, starting from Hatha Yoga and leading all the way to the actual purpose of yoga. So, without delay, let us welcome Shri Zeb Homison.
Namaste. How are you, Prabhu?
Thank you so much. Namaste and Hari Bol
Haribol.
for coming on the show and taking out your valuable time. So, Zeb, before we start off, we see a lot of things happening about mental issues. People are talking about it. And if you ask a policy guys, they'll talk about what needs to be done. And there is a huge, without getting into the names of anyone, there is a left divide, there's a right divide. And we as a yoga community, we are in the dharmic side on the center. So we are neither on the left nor the right. We are the center, we are dharmic. So the point comes in, people like you or me and others like us who have the real solutions, but nobody discusses with us. In fact, no one, the people, it's a general trend of the society that a community of dharmic people are sidelined by everybody. And that is a sign of Kali Yuga as well. So, what is the solution to today's problem? I've been in many, many meetings, public gatherings. I go sometimes to sign the books and I ask one thing, what is the solution? And nobody has a solution. People are just trying to put bandage on the problem and it's not going to solve it. So what is your viewpoint?
It's definitely, there are definitely issues. People with sort of mental issues, the societal gap between, I don't know if you want to call it the right and the left or the red and the blue or whatever that is. It seems these days like everybody just wants to have a fight rather than actually talk about, how we can fix something, like you just said. And you're right. Like there are those of us that sort of live somewhere right in the middle. And I think there are a lot of us out there in the country and in the world that that sort of have a more centered viewpoint. And that's not exciting for like the media. That's not a story for somebody to go and like do an interview on and create sensational news. So our story, like you just said, never really gets told. We don't get asked our opinion because it's not newsworthy. So, but how do we find a solution? I think people really have to get together non-emotionally, because a lot of the like I don't know if you're talking about any issues in specific, but all the recent stuff with gun control comes to mind. How do we find a resolve to some of these issues? We have to actually get together and work calmly, peacefully, without emotion. With something that comes up in yoga a lot is the idea of non-attachment. People get so attached to their side of the story that there's no way to compromise. And you see that more and more in today's society, where people have been so split apart by social media and all the YouTube stuff that they watch, and they've forgotten how to just sit down and talk with somebody on the opposite side of the fence.
You mentioned very, very key points here. I'll pick up the conversation from your words, actually. So you mentioned, and being a teacher on this middle path, where you are trying to be when you're not taking sides, you're just trying to give solutions, because solution is always in the middle path, not in the extreme positions. And recently I was watching one interview of Indian foreign minister, and it's in Slovakia, some Slovak area, I don't forget the city name, somewhere in Europe. It happened 4 days back. And somehow India has taken a neutral stance, which has been condemned by all over the world. And India said, we are on our ground. We want peace on all sides. We don't want anyone to fight. And luckily, then they're providing medicines to all sides, including USA. Most of the medicines now in USA come from India. And other side as well. Russia also, they're supplying. Now, that's an ancient culture speaking now, because the solution is in bringing harmony on both sides, because both sides are out there to kill themselves, both of them. And in your years of practice and teaching, I'm sure you must have helped so many people coming out of deep mental issues through your teaching of yoga and the body postures. So what is your view from that experience, that how you have helped people? So many thousands of people have gone through your program. I'm also a student also. I learned from you. So what is your experience has been?
So just my personal experience, when I was younger, like in my 20s into my late 20s, I personally was like just a very angry person. I carried around a lot of angst from my younger life and from college, university. For years, I lived in New York City. And if you've ever been to New York City, it's just like chaos and angst all the time. And I didn't have a way to release that. And so I just it was all bottled up inside of me. And when I started practicing yoga, there was this moment of relief from that. And it took years of practice for me to really start to let all of that go. But from the moment that I took my first asana class, I could see the path. I was like, oh, this is going to help me. And, it's not just anger issues that it helps with. Really, almost any mental struggle that people are going through, a regular, whether it's asana practice or meditation or breath work, even chanting, any of the different yoga methods that are out there, all of them are pathways to start to reduce stress in the body and to start to realize what's going on in the mind and be able to manage it, to start to work on it, and eventually, with any luck, fix it.
So the modern medicines, they do not understand the mind actually, because the medicines only act on the body, and the mind
True.
is something else. Mind is all over, present all over the body. Atman, sometimes people they call it also, but
And
Atman.
there's the like mental health services, especially in the US, are very limited.
Very interesting. I mean, you will. I was studying the statistics of mental health, and it's an old report, 2017 report. The countries with the least mental health all happen to be in the ASEAN region, Asia,
Hmm.
Southeast Asia, and Asia, beginning from
Which
India.
are also some of the poorest countries, right?
Some of the poorest countries. They didn't cover Africa. I was surprised. I thought that Africa will have the happiest people, but they didn't say that. And the most unhappiest people, will be shocked by the names. Where the mental disease is the number one, like a 900 people out of 100,000 people. That's the statistics. New Zealand, Iran, Norway, and then USA. So these are USA is around 693. This is 2017 data. People can search on the Google also. And the USA is still better than others, 30% better. But general scores of the ASEAN countries were 300, 200. And the most happiest country was Vietnam. I was totally shocked. Maybe I thought that initially the report is bad or something is bad, because obviously China did not have data, because you'll have more mental issues over there than anywhere else. But but generally, I was shocked that the entire Southeast Asian countries had the maximum, they had the best mental health.
Yeah.
And
When was that report from?
2017
Okay.
must have changed significantly, because it is, and also the conflict zone.
Pre-pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, prepare. And the conflict zones, I was marking them. Iran had the worst one, because there's a lot of oppression there, a lot of oppression.
Hmm.
Because most of the Iranians, they call themselves Persians, but they have destroyed Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism was the an offshoot of Vedic culture, everything, and then they call themselves Zoroastrian Persian, but the mental health over there is really bad because of oppression due to ideology or to faith or anything. So my question to you is, you mentioned about the gun violence also, and I have been talking to many people, and my job is only to ask questions, not to get the answers. For answers, you have to come under the formal study. Otherwise, we are not going to tell you on YouTube and other things, because it requires certain practice, physical practice. So, I asked the same question: that what is the solution? Where is the problem? Because an 18-year-old boy, for whatever reason, you can brand it as racism, you can brand whatever you want, but that is not a complete answer. That is, again, you are rugging under the carpet. There's something else going on. Why not 90% of the people do the same thing? Why only 10% are doing this, doing those kind of actions? So the answer is not there, but we know the answer. I know philosophically the answer, and trying yoga practice based on that understanding really helps you to keep your mind stable. Like Bhagavan Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Anudvega karam vakyam satyam priyatam chayat. Like he says, you should speak your words, Anudvega karam. You should not agitate others. You should speak truthful words. You should speak pleasing words. And you should speak words which are beneficial to others. Very simple guideline. That is called Tan Vakmayam Tapa Uchyate. That is the tapa of the speech. Now, before speech happens, you need to also take care of your vritti and your mind, the science behind the mind and other things. Halting the vritti. There is no such talk, there is no such course, nothing. I've seen so many yoga courses in North American campuses, and there is no such thing. So, what is your experience in you, because you get so many students over there? What is your experience when you deal with the students? Which condition they come in, and how they go out, and how they smile? Because I've not seen anyone crying in your school. Everyone is happy.
Tears happen on occasion.
Tears of happiness.
I think, yeah. First, we should sort of talk about what is vritti, right? I don't know if all of your watchers have an idea of like what that is. So I don't know if you want to explain that real quick.
Yeah, thank you for putting me on the spot here. But so vritti, there are five vritti there. Five vrittis are the vritti of this Nidra vritti, the last one is Sankalpa vritti, and there are three other vrittis which is deal with the halting of the urges. Like for example, Praman is one of the vritti where you look for proofs, evidences. So vritti is the way in which a human mind functions. There are five different functions of the mind, including sleep, and all these are created so that we can have a complete experience. And otherwise we won't have the experience of cognition, which we call cognition. So cognition is vritti. In English, what you call cognition is vritti.
Mhm.
And yes, go ahead, please.
One of the translations of the Yoga Sutras that I have refers to them as just fluctuations of the mind. I love that there's a deeper explanation that there are like 5 different ones and the mind has all of them. That's one of my favorite things about Vedic teaching and Vedic culture. Like, there's an explanation for everything. And if you dig deep enough and you research enough, like you were just saying about Sanskrit at the beginning of the show, like you can write down anything in Sanskrit and it'll be pronounced correctly and the meaning will be there. So much that there were so many like profound thinkers and the culture runs so deep. I'm just like a baby sort of beginning to study all this stuff, but I love how deep it goes. Now, the original question. So remind me, we're talking about vrittis.
The science of halting the mind's urges, manasa vega, like how people can control, like what is your
How do we
experience?
control it? Yeah, I mean that's the question. And I think the ancient yogis, like a lot of the yoga system, like if you look at the Yoga Sutras from Patanjali, the third line of the Yoga Sutras is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. It's yoga is the stilling of the vrittis, of the fluctuations of the mind. And like I was saying earlier, whether it's yoga asana or whether you're practicing mantra chanting or breath work, pranayama, all of them are different techniques, and there are many more as well. They're all techniques to start to quiet the mind, to start to notice that the mind is something other than the self and that we have control over it. I think so many people on the planet are totally tuned out and just don't even have the beginning of the idea that the mind is something that I can control. It's just these crazy thoughts and these patterns, these samskaras that have been like built over a lifetime, and we have no idea how to change it. And so we don't. But yoga, any of these practices that I've described, they're all different techniques so that we can start to notice the mind, understand the mind, and eventually quiet all those different vrittis so that we can be still and we can start to attain something greater, self-realization. Yes.
You know, the now I remember it's praman, viparyaya, and vikalpa, nidra, and smriti. These are the 5. And praman, and these are the 5 vritti, and it's so scientific. Like it's not even a imagine, because we all know. I saw the Freudian theories on mind and other theories on mind, and ultimately it deals down to chemicals. and then balancing the chemicals, and then all the drugs have been introduced to just make you hyper or hypo.
Right.
And that's what the drugs do. They're nothing else. They don't balance it. And because we don't focus on diet, we don't focus on other aspects, emotional needs. We have emotional needs, and having emotions is a good one. And we have been taught by the Hollywood and the Bollywood that, oh, you are the king of the world and you have to just do what you like to do.
Right.
So and then we are actually, we don't want to follow anyone, but we follow them. Look at what happens when Tom Cruise enters a place. The whole place is like swarmed like bees. Everyone just trying to get a glimpse. And people do not know that what happened to Michael Jackson. He was taking so many drugs, all kinds of drugs he was taking just to sleep. And we yogis have no problem in sleeping. They just lie down and they sleep immediately.
Yeah.
So the solutions are here. So what is your experience in removing like the sleep related disorders, which is sleep apnea, which people suffer a lot, and where we use yoga to put people at ease, and then they get good sleep, sound sleep. And but it is recommended as a therapy, but not as a like a solution, not a solution. People say, okay, you can take a therapy, but that's not a complete solution. You just still go to the pharmacy and buy some drugs, otherwise you won't get to sleep. What is your experience in that, removing such kind of issues? I just took one example.
Yeah. And I think some doctors are slowly starting to realize that yoga can actually help with some of these conditions. You were saying a moment ago, like yoga or Vedic thought is like a science. It runs so deep. And Western medicine, Western science is like, in the grand scale of things, if you zoom out, it's still very young. And, we think we know a lot, but in my opinion, it's still sort of like forming a lot of its opinions and a lot of its knowledge. So yeah, we go to the doctor and they prescribe us Adderall or Ritalin or whatever different medication they might prescribe. And like you said, it's an upper, it's a downer, it speeds us up, it slows us down, but it doesn't get to the root of the problem. And I think that's the case for so many different diseases in our society today. There's a very prominent yoga teacher, physical culturist in India in the turn of the 19th century, Vishnu Charan Ghosh. And one of his most famous quotes that he said, and this was like in the 1920s, 100 years ago, he said, stress is a major factor in every disease in modern society. And like, how insightful is that for 100 years ago? And how, like, today, even more so, I think. So to be able to, one of the great things that all these different yoga techniques do for us is they start to reduce stress. They act on the central nervous system. And all this stress that the body has built up, and it has no natural way of releasing it. Our bodies, in a lot of ways, are still living in the Stone Age. And so they don't understand whether, if a saber-toothed tiger or a bear or an elephant is chasing us, all these chemicals get released in the body and we're like, oh, I've got to run away. The digestion slows down, the adrenaline starts pumping. And that's what stress does. Whether it's a tiger chasing us or somebody honking on the horn in traffic or the boss yelling at work, it releases the same chemical reaction in the body. And our bodies have no way of naturally letting go of that, because we're supposed to run and hide and survive. But if we're at work or if we're in the car, it just like sits and builds. And so we need something, we need a technique, a way to be able to start to slow that down. And again, to start to notice the mind. So we're not always living in that state of high stress. We can start to bring it back down. And again, notice ourselves. That's key.
You know, the current crisis with the veterans' health, and I was studying the prescriptions some one of my friends shared with them when they were posted abroad on deployments, different deployments, and the kind of drugs they were given over there, the after effects continue for rest of the lives, and then there are certificates given on their mental health, and regularly they have to go for checkup, mandatory checkup. So that means the medicines that they were given were really not helpful, because they knew the after effects of those medicines are going to be, and they get permanently emotionally damaged. Good, one of my friends was joking with me that we are damaged goods walking in the society, and the so the impact of those medicines has been worse than the disease they were trying to cure. They're worse than that. So what is the solution to these mental health issues of the veterans' health? Because they have done such a good service to this country, and they need to be taken care of. And I was looking at the medicinal systems of other countries, many other countries, because every country has armed forces. And I was looking, the same problem exists in Chinese forces actually. They have the same issues with they use the drugs to motivate their people to fight. But when they're actually on the border, the drug weans off and they run away. And this is what is happening. Like, it's been a common practice nowadays, but there are certain other forces like Japanese forces, Indian forces, and even British forces. British forces also have this problem is increasing now. So what is the way to help veterans through yoga so that they resume normal lives?
I know in the US there's at least one program that actually teaches vets yoga. And they've actually come through my studio in Pittsburgh once or twice. And they bring big groups of veterans together, and they all hang out for a weekend and practice yoga. And it's actually really sweet. I think the more of them that can do that, the better. I don't know if there's a total solution. It's part of our system. It's part of our society where, yeah, soldiers, they go and do this amazing duty for their country, and then they sort of get overlooked when they come home. I have a family member that's a veteran that, he's taken pretty well care of, but he's not all of the stories go that way. A lot of vets, they just don't have the mental support, the emotional support that they need coming home from having to do who knows what in all these other countries. So back to this idea of vrittis, these different fluctuations in the mind. If we can start to get a handle on those, if veterans were able to build a regular yoga practice and start to notice all the things that were troubling them, and maybe over time start to get a handle on some of it, how useful is that? How powerful is that? But it's not something that's common. It's not a belief that's commonly held in medical practices. especially for the armed forces. So it's an uphill battle to get the word out. And I think like I said, there are organizations that are actively trying to teach yoga to veterans, and I think that's amazing. But there's so many more out there that get overlooked. And I think it would be really, not just for veterans, for so many people that have mental problems. There was a recent study at Harvard about the effects of practicing yoga on depression and on PTSD, which a lot of veterans suffer from. And I think there need to be more studies. That's one of the reasons that medical science and science in general don't really accept yoga as a treatment, because it's not proven. There haven't been tests and studies done on it because there's no money in it.
That's right.
Nobody's going to get a fat paycheck for a bunch of people feeling better after doing yoga. I hate to say it.
Commercialization is a big problem towards getting a real solution, because commercialization actually, it denies the motive for practicing these ones. Now, I was reading the Yoga Sutra, Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Now, so according to this shloka of Yoga Sutra, which is shloka number, I think, 2,
Maybe?
second shloka.
Yeah, okay.
Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Now, here the vritti is the 5 vrittis are the elements of the mind, not the fluctuations of the mind. The 5 vritti make up the mind. So it's like that. But we are not talking about halting them, controlling them, and we are not talking about, like you mentioned, the family support or emotional support you mentioned. Now, none of those things, wherever those things break down in any family or nation, it is impossible to control after that, because then you'll have people who will be driven. And that's how most of the faith-based systems, they say, if you believe in something, like it's like a believe something imaginary and just go for it. And where the yoga, why I call it a science, because you can experience it. That's why it's an experiential science. The science has to be also, you have to do experiments, and then you develop a firm conviction. And yoga is an experiment on yourself, where you start doing yoga and in a right way, understanding the background and everything, and then you can start experiencing the benefits of it. But the one problem we have is that we have been taught for a one capsule solution. Put a pill in your mouth and everything goes fine after that. And or just if you're feeling low, get a Red Bull or some other things and get highly caffeinated. Now you're hyperactive, and then again the effect, when it weans off, it has a totally detrimental effect, because you go so down, just like caffeine.
Yeah, we joke sometimes that if you could make a pill for the feeling that you get after a yoga class, you would be rich, because you feel so good after practicing yoga. Same idea.
Coming to a totally different area now. So when you look at the Eastern US, the Western US, and Northern US, and the South US, 4 regions, and the Central also, all the 4 areas. Now, which, according to your experience, the group, we're not talking specific, but which area, people of which area seem to be happiest to you?
Oh, that's a good question. I've done a lot of traveling around the country, and just in my experience, the people in the Southwest, and this is a generalization, seem to be a little bit more happy. They're enjoying their lives. And I think a lot of that has to do with the climate, although the climate isn't really a stable thing anymore these days. But they're getting a lot of sunshine. The weather is generally pretty mild. So, people's lives in this country are, there are so many highs and so many lows, rich and poor, happy, sad, different situations. But the environment you're living in has a great effect on the life you're leading. I live in this weird gray area that's not really northeast and it's not really central, sort of stuck in the middle somewhere. And it's an interesting place. They call it the Rust Belt. All these old cities that used to be big booming factory towns that when steel production left the States, they had to sort of redefine themselves. And Pittsburgh itself has done a pretty good job of that, but the whole region is still pretty depressed, I guess you would call it. But you were saying earlier how, happiness in different countries, like it was a little surprising to you that some of these like Southeast Asian countries were some of the happiest. And they've done studies, I think, on sort of how much wealth you have and how, especially people that make more than like, I forget, it was like just over $100,000 a year, the more money they make, they're actually disproportionately more unhappy.
These countries are the least mental health issues. Oh,
okay. Yeah, so it wasn't like happiness, the study, it was mental health issues. Yeah, so it's a tricky question to answer. But like I said, I think people that live in a more mild, like even the Northwest, it's a mild climate. There's less sunshine in the Northwest, but they spend more time outside in nature generally. All these things have a definite effect on the mood of people and how they interact with others.
One of the essential principles of a healthy living is control your diet.
Yes.
Very simple. And live on the local available diets, like whatever is available locally, naturally. And that is one of the principles. And I've seen, there are no studies, but generally, if you meet Native Americans in the reservations, now reservations are far away from these so-called happy places. And they're in the middle of nowhere. And, I happened to be one of them 2 days back. And I could see children just like I would see in an Indian village, running around, playing, and no fear of anything, like a healthy childhood.
Yeah.
And when the same kid comes to the city, he gets completely transformed because he has different kinds of aspirations and desires, and the kind of dreams that our institutions sell. That, like for example, the dream of the American dream, owning a house, your own car, and nowadays to own a house is, especially in where I live, it's a very difficult work. And it's getting more and more. I was seeing the statistics now that renting is becoming the major thing now going forward. Owning is not going to be main thing, at least for the next 5 years, and then is going down. So the selling the American dream, and you see a person, because these people, they think of movie as a reality, and they are trying to see whether it's a message being sent out. And I hate those movies which are built on realistic scenarios, because now you are actually enforcing that thing in the mind now. Vritti, again, that thing going to vritti, which is going to smriti, remembrance. It's not real life, but it's what is shown in the movie, where they show It used to be very common in 70s and 80s movies where divorce was considered, oh, we got divorced, and the hero is struggling, and there is another man, and the child is seeing with another man, with their mother. Very like institutionalizing that this is normal.
Hmm.
This is normalizing. This is a real life. That's not real life. You all come from a very stable family, and there are many other Americans have a very healthy, stable family. The Western, the when I go to India and other places, they think of America as a completely a bunch of broken families, crazy lunatics, and kids. That's how they think general American as. But in the Midwest, if you go where you stay, very stable families, people married for 40 years, 45 years, 50 years, celebrating their golden jubilee in marriages. That basic family structure is still there. In Native American families, which are really native today, most of them are changed now. Their families are very stable now, and in those families, you'll see some kind of reasoning, some kind of a rediscovering the self, or some kind of a spiritual pursuit. You are right that wherever there is more sun, people are healthier. That is right. But you go to LA and you'll see the result over there.
Yeah.
It's practically unsafe to walk on the streets
Still
now.
a lot of very unhappy people. Yes.
Very so the sun is not enough here. Something else is missing.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. What is your view on that?
I think 2 points. You're absolutely right with the things that the media and movies teach us. They start to normalize things that aren't necessarily reality. And an easy example of that is like all the violence in movies, but also like things like you're pointing out, like normalizing divorce, normalizing broken families. There's so many things that Hollywood and the media in general not only normalize but sort of romanticize. So it starts to become like the desired thing almost. The Native Americans in the US have been marginalized and have been like everything has been taken away from them. And even to this day, like they're not getting the support that they need. They still keep getting things taken away, as we could see with the pipeline a couple of years ago and that whole debacle. The things that we're okay with as a society and a culture, they need to shift. And the only way to do that is to start from the ground up. Like we need to start thinking about like what's important in life. What really makes someone happy? And it's not money and cars and fancy clothes and being famous and powerful. We get told that story by movies, by the media. But even people that have that money, power, fame, like you were just saying, look at Michael Jackson, look at some of these celebrities that they have to go on these huge cocktails of drugs just to be able to sleep at night. Prince, the musical artist, was another example of that. And eventually they don't make it. There are a lot of people that become famous and they don't make it past their late 20s because it's just like it's such a hard, wild ride for them. We need to dig deeper and figure out what makes us at our core happy. And family life, a really stable family life, which it was kind of you to say that I have one. I didn't really grow up with one. But that can be really important and a guideline for the rest of your life, growing up in a stable situation like that. Having a community that's really supportive. Right now, we have no communities. It's all online. It's all social media, and Facebook and these other companies have done a really good job of just like isolating all of us. We need to get back out into the world and actually and COVID as well. But eventually, we have to get back out there and interact with people. Human beings evolved to be social creatures, not to sit on a screen all day and dig further into our psychosis. It's important.
Yeah, growing your own food, using your backyard with your own hand, making your hands dirty with the soil.
Yeah.
Important, very important.
Yep.
Because it actually connects you to the reality. Earth is the biggest reality you face every day. We are looking for magic and we are looking for miracles. The biggest miracle is a seed going into a plant and producing fruits.
Yeah.
That's a small seed.
Yeah.
The biggest miracle. And the rain's coming. Well, California doesn't see rain, so I won't say that. And my last question for today, and we'll do more shows like this. You mentioned many of your videos, the importance of spine for the health, mental health, physical health of a human. And now that fact is not emphasized enough. You know it, and many yoga teachers know it, but not emphasized enough for the mental health of people. What is your view on that?
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm not a medical expert by any means, but I've been teaching yoga for quite a while now. And, the first yoga system that I started training in years ago, the spine was the most important thing. One of the gurus of that lineage, Paramahansa Yogananda, he came to the States in the early 1900s, traveled around and did many lectures about the benefits of yoga. And he was always talking about how, and this is maybe a stretch for some people, but he would say, God resides in the spine. And however you want to think about God, but the central nervous system, the spinal cord, the communication highway for the entire body is in the spine. And the better we take care of it, the more that we move the spine and, practicing yoga, whatever system of yoga you practice, there are forward bends, there are back bends, there are side bends. So one of the things anatomy people call moving the spine like that, they refer to it as flossing the nerves of the spine, where the nerves actually, they're like in a bundle of like wires almost, and they move against each other. And any impingements, any sort of, for lack of a better word, gunk that's built up, little nodules or anything, they just, as the nerves move against each other, it clears that away. So it keeps the spine moving happily and healthfully. It also shifts the cerebral spinal fluid that, it's in the spinal cord, but it also goes up into the brain and keeps that moving, keeps it flowing. So physically manipulating the spine also affects what's going on chemically. When you practice inversions, when you bring the head below the heart and you rush blood to the brain, that has a huge effect on what's going on in the brain. BKS Iyengar has a talk on YouTube that you can look up where he talks about the benefits of inversions and how it affects the hypothalamus. It affects the emotional centers in the brain. It again removes stress. It shifts the central nervous system, which usually takes all the stress and it's wound up all the time. When you practice inversions, the peripheral nervous system actually starts to it pulls stress away from the central nervous system. So there are a lot of different ways that yoga and backward bending can affect what's going on in the mind. But, very simple answer: when you backward bend, when you move your spine in this way that opens up the whole front side of the body, it makes you feel better. It releases stress, it calms you down. And when you feel better, you're able to move through the rest of your day, navigate your family and your boss and traffic and whatever it is without snapping, without all the stress from the day getting to you and you making a decision, having a reaction that you don't like. You're in more control. So back to this whole idea of self-realization, whether it's backward bends or whatever other yoga you're practicing, when you feel better and you're in more control, you are able to navigate life that much better. If you're at a college campus and you're doing your studies, practicing yoga will make you more mentally, it'll keep you awake. It will just make you more aware. If you're a housewife, taking care of or a house father, whatever the opposite would be, it would allow you to take care of the kids better, to manage your daily, all the things you have to do throughout the day. It calms us down, makes us more aware, makes us feel better.
Thank you for sharing that, because people generally attach yoga to flexibility, which is, we already discussed one of the earlier shows, so viewers can watch that show, that how flexibility is not the major criteria of doing yoga, but it develops flexibility. So that's what it is. It was my last question, but one more question has come from the audience actually. So I will post the link of Zeb. If you're on the East Coast near Pittsburgh area, do go there. I'll post the link of his studio and zebyoga.com, and you can also go to search him out, Zeb Yoga, and also on Facebook and other places also. Your experience in Cancun, you were in Cancun and you had also taken a trip to Peru, which I missed.
Yeah, we missed you there.
And I was busy in publishing my book, Pandavas, the Famous Five. So I could not go. It was the last days. And when you're writing a book, you are just immersed, like you travel with the book. And right now I'm working on the meditation book, which I told you, and I'm totally immersed in Vritti right now. I've not come out of Vritti for 45 days. But Kali Yuga memory makes you forget many things. But in your experience of Cancun and Peru and other places where you must have interacted with the locals also, how did you find the mental status of people locally over there? Many of them live on the land. What was your experience?
The people in Peru are so connected to the land, and in general, I from my experience, I would say are so much more connected and happy. I mean, if you've ever been or seen pictures, just the landscape, the mountains, the deserts, the big sky, it's almost impossible to be there and not feel connected, whether it's to the earth or something more spiritual. I think that's why a lot of people go there and take pilgrimage there, just to start to reconnect, to have that feeling. So the people there absolutely connected. And Cancun, if you've been or you've seen pictures, is a beautiful, beautiful place on the planet, and also very powerful. The Mayans lived in that area, and there are ruined pyramids and ruins everywhere. Very powerful place on the planet, but it's got this little like dark cloud of energy hanging over it, with all the partying and the hotels and the drugs, like everything that goes on there in modern society. But you still can't cover up all the wonder of nature and the energy that's there. And the people that live there, a lot of them have Mayan heritage. And just like the people, the natives in Peru, they're still really connected to the land. They still are really connected to their version of spirituality. And you can see it. They're a very strong people. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you mentioned Cancun. That's why I put a contrast over there, because you were in both the places right after one, back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And Peru, obviously, it's mentioned in Ramayana also. Candelabra Mountain is a Ramayana artifact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a prehistoric for them because they do not know who made the Yagya Vedika on the hill. Yagya Vedika was built during the Ramayana period, before pre-Ramayana period, actually.
There's a lot of stuff in Peru that they're not really sure where it came from.
They put a lot of theories also. Like right now, they put a laser mapping of Amazon. I was listening to William Hancock and how the laser mapping showed many underlying structures underneath the Amazon.
Yep.
And the whole city is the city as large as New York City, under the Amazon forests, and which is very striking. And I wish to go there very soon, sometime in future. Thank you so much, Zeb, for coming on the show and sharing. And I will plan the next show with you. And for all the viewers who are watching and asking so many questions, I did answer you because you are immediately searching on Instagram. And so you search Zeb Yoga, you'll see him on Instagram as well. And you can follow him there, and you can follow him on through his website. And also you can, if you are on there, or if you want to travel for a weekend, do that.
Yeah, I do travel and do seminars as well. So I'm happy to come visit if you have a local yoga school. And we have some online classes at yogafactory.com. If you're interested in doing some online yoga, you can check us out there.
So thank you all very much. And thank you for watching this show. And do comment, let me know your feedback, and let me know if you want to connect with Zeb. I'll make that connection happen. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Prabhu.